the studio today with Mikkel Heimburger. We're in Culver City, California, not too far from the Antelope demo studio. How you doing today, Mick?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing great. Thanks for taking some time out with us from some of your projects. What kind of work do you do here again?
Well, I work for a company called Sub Pop Music. We do music for trailers, movies, film, TV, and commercials.
And what kind of projects have you worked on recently?
For movies, we just placed a rock song in the latest Al Pacino movie, Stand Up Guys. I don't think it's out yet. And we just pitched another rock song for the latest, or the sequel to the 300 movie.
And I think you were going to show us a little bit later some work that you did on the last Muppet movie, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Looking around your room, you've got a lot of hardware, outboard gear. So you kind of work with a combination kind of setup with in-the-box synths and some processing and synths outboard, some Moog, and I see the Access Virus back there. What can you tell us a little bit about some of the gear you like to work with?
Yeah, exactly. We do mostly analog going in. We have some Moog stuff, Little Fatty, and some Dave Smith synths that we combine with software like the Virus, which is half software, half hardware. And so we do it that way with instruments. We go through real amps all the way, preamps, compressors. Normally we do some API stuff on guitar, into a distressor, into the Orion. I've A-B'd a lot lately after getting the Orion, and in my opinion the Orion wins hands down in every way, feature-wise, channel-wise, price-wise. But price not being the most important factor, it still wins in my A-B testing, and we're talking about testing against some of the usual suspects.
You had some reservations about USB at first.
I had my reservations for sure, but the Orion is just amazing. I don't know how they did it. It just runs.
And you're summing into the Shadow Hills, I see, right?
Yeah, I recently got the Shadow Hills 2. It seemed like a logical step going with 32 channels, 30 channels, because 1 and 2 is just the DAW. And that's just an amazing setup. And there's no way I could do that without those 2 units at that price.
Do you have any processing then that comes after that in the analog world?
Yeah, like what we do for trailers, and especially movie trailers actually, the turnaround time is insane. We're talking about 8 hours sometimes from when a request is sent out until they need it on their desk. So I run through a little bit of mastering processing on the 2-bus. I use the API 2500, the Smart C2 into a Pultec EQ, into the Pendulum PL2 limiter.
And then you record it back in.
And I record that back into the Orion.
And how's the A to D section of the Orion?
It's amazing. Again, I've A/B tested with my previous units, and especially that part, because when you record an instrument, you're like, okay, that's what I recorded, fine. But when you bounce a whole mix that you've been listening to and mixing and mastering, you know 100% how it sounds.
What about virtual synths and virtual instruments? Is the latency been any kind of problem at all?
No, again, for me, it's way better. I mean, I haven't had an issue. I can go down to 256 or lower in buffer size, and I've tried almost everything. And just the fact of having 32 channels. If you ever want to do any kind of summing, and you want to go beyond the normal 8, which a lot of companies, you can do 8, but like Peter Reardon, for example, from Shadow Hill says, you pretty much has to go above 20 channels summing wise before it really matters, and I feel that that's true. I mean, just the other day I was mixing a track for a few friends of mine, and just A-Bing the 2 out as opposed to 30 out was just an amazing difference.
I noticed that, and I'm sure our viewers are going to notice, I'm going to get a little off topic here, but I noticed that you're of a little bit of an accent.
Oh, really?
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark.
And you've been in LA for how long?
13 years now. Yeah, I've been in the US for a long time. I studied in Denmark. I went to Berkeley in Boston for a while, and then I went here and got a student visa and went to MI, Musicians Institute in Hollywood, for a little bit. And then, I've just stuck around. I love it here. Music is everywhere, and it's great.
So LA's been good to you?
Oh, for sure.
Plenty of work, keeping busy?
Yeah, lately it's really picked up, like the trailer world, commercials, production, music in general. It's great.
We haven't done this in a long time.
Your fans never left you. The world hasn't forgotten.
Sure, it's impossible, but we've got to try.
It's time to play the music.
It's time to light the lights.
It's time to meet the Muppets.
Come on, guys, let's go! Wow, I can't believe we're all back together. Yeah!
Sorry, I was super excited.
The Muppets have always been about artistic integrity, not cheap tricks.
Check it out. Punches!
So how did movie trailers become your forte? And maybe it isn't, but it just seems like those are the ones that you're getting that make
Right.
the biggest splash.
Exactly. I don't know if it's my forte. When you're not 25 anymore and you don't want to be on the road all the time. I have a family. This is just fun. You get to create music and make a little bit of money, which works too. So that's it, and it's really interesting. You get a lot of different requests, genre-wise stuff. If you were just doing your own little band, which is fine, you would kind of stay in that niche because that's your band, right? I have to go from rock to jazz to quirky stuff to hardcore industrial, anything really.
So for musicians out there that reach that point where the family starts to happen and they say, oh, I need to start getting serious as an occupation, or I need to do something else, is I guess, gleaning from what you were saying, a good bit of advice to be flexible and broad-ranging and cover a lot of genres. Is that really the best approach?
Yeah, exactly. If you take this road and end up here, you got to be flexible. I think
And fast, I would think, right?
Oh yeah. It's crazy. The deadlines are a thing of its own, But just at some point, if you want to make any money, I'm not saying that's why we do music, but you want to make some money, or you could do as I did like 5 years ago. I was a full-time web programmer and web designer, and then I spent the little time I had at the end of the day or when I didn't work on music, and I wanted to change that, and I could not do that with just starting a band. There's no way I could do that. I would not make any money. So this is just a good way. I get to play music and make some money and live and have fun.
How much is there when you get footage? Like we talked about the new 300 movie, and you were kind of using the old 300 footage because they weren't releasing the new footage yet. So how much is there already? Are there temp tracks there that you jam with, or to start, or is it a blank slate? Does it vary?
It varies a lot. I mean, if we're just talking trailers now, Most of the times you don't get video. Sometimes, like I did, you can pull if it's a sequel or something similar, you can pull that and just mute the music and try to, even if you don't make the song to fit the cuts in that edit, you can still get the vibe from like the 300, like the first one. It's going to be somewhat the same.
Right.
So you can use that just to come up with the track, really.
And you do some advertising work too, right? Can you tell us what that's like as opposed to the movie stuff?
Yeah, I mean, a trailer is advertising really, but if we're talking advertising for a product, we do that too, and that can be really, really specific sometimes. They can ask for a 37-second sequence. It has to be a rock song. Maybe they send a reference. It has to sound kind of like that. Not too much, because someone will get sued. Something like that, but it needs to include the words California and sunshine, and it needs to have a female vocalist. Bam, that's it, and we need it in 24 hours. So that's a big challenge, and if you don't have something you can pull from in your catalog already, that's close to impossible, but we still try to do it sometimes and just wing it, but come up with the best thing we have. Write a song, write the lyrics, start producing it, recording it, get a vocalist in, get it down, mix it, comp it, melodyne it if it needs it, mix it, maybe send it to mastering if we feel that the project is so far along and it's good enough to do that, and then ship it off to the client, and then maybe it'll fly, maybe it won't, maybe they'll get back to us and say, well, their client, which is actually, whoever, Apple or 7-Eleven, someone, they totally changed direction, so now it needs to be a jazz song and involve some other keywords. So you're like, oh, wow, now I have a rock
Boston
song.
Boston and rainy.
Right, exactly, yeah. That it can change that radical. And then, that's just the business, Sometimes I spend 2-3 weeks, 18 hours a day, making 3 or 4 options for a certain request, and it doesn't end up, taking, because they change direction 5 times in the meantime, But that's just a part of the game, and I'll keep those tracks and use it for a CD release later. Maybe it'll even fit another request, if it's like California Sunshine, that could fit another request,
Pretty common.
Exactly, yeah.
So, video game music, have you delved with that at all?
We haven't placed anything, but like I said, a lot of our industrial stuff would definitely fit in video games, and I have talked to a few companies lately and shipped some stuff off to them, some industrial, some dance tracks that they wanted for the end of a game trailer. It was still the game trailer, but yeah, it's all the same thing. I mean, it's advertising, right? So trailers, commercials, video games, it's really all the same thing.
Yeah, sometimes I'm watching a video game and it feels like I'm watching a movie, or at least
exactly.
the vibe of it.
Especially, action video games now, they're marketed as an action movie, and you almost can't tell the difference.
Yeah, it does take a couple seconds on those trailers.
Yeah, and all the graphics are so amazing now. It's like, is that real? Or no, I don't know,
Do you find in Europe that music knowledge, music theory is more widespread than in the U.S.?
I don't know. I mean, maybe in general, people are more interested in art in general, which includes music, so maybe that aspect of it. And there's also a lot more music in the schools, just as a class. So I guess that would account for that.
I lived in Europe, in Germany for 9 years, and I used to tell people, you'd meet someone on the street and they'd, play them a song, and they'd say, oh, you should have used a 909 kick instead of an 808 kick. I'm like, what? You work at a car factory. What do you know about music? It just seems like, especially electronic music in Germany, but I always thought in Europe in general that they had a lot more music theory knowledge across the board.
Well, I think just like programming and using applications like Cubase Logic was like earlier in Europe. I mean, I used Cubase in like '89 in Europe,
I think I was 90, 91,
Right, and
starting on Atari.
Like everyone had Logic or Cubase. That's what they used in Europe. And over here, it's like the last 5-10 years tops that like normal, not musicians have like applications like that on their computer or laptop. In Europe, it was like, 10, 15 years ago that was more like, even though you weren't a musician by profession, you would still dabble around with music at home.
Right. And you came over to the States and you went to Berkeley.
Correct, yeah.
And how was that experience after studying in Denmark?
It was great. There's always like a fascination with the U.S. in general from European, like being born in Denmark. So I was kind of fascinated with the U.S. in general, and then there's also, just the level of teachers at Berkeley was amazing. I took a lot of arranging classes that were amazing. I had already gone to a conservatory music school in Denmark, so some of the music theory I had already done, but it was kind of a different approach. I mean, Berkeley has their own approach to music theory. They're kind of different than every other school, actually.
In what way? In what way do they approach it?
That's hard to explain. It's just they don't use the classical way of charting stuff.
Interesting.
Not that they don't also do that, but they also have their own way, more jazz-oriented. And for some people think it's easier to get, I guess.
And how did it prepare you for what you're doing now with television and film?
Berkeley, it's just a really good overall education. I didn't major in a specific, I wasn't like guitar player only. I tried to do a broad range of courses. Like I said, arranging, music theory, ear training, all stuff like that you can use in anything music related you do.
And you played in bands growing up?
Oh yeah, I played in a lot of garage bands, rock bands in Denmark and in the US, and touring all over the world. Touring all over the US in a van for like a month and a half, sleeping in the van, all that,
Down by the river.
Exactly. So that was its own thing. It was great, but the stuff I'm doing now is...
how much of that edginess from playing in garage bands and touring, how much of that is coming through? Because when I listen to your trailer work, it seems like it does have a bite and an edge, and there's an energy to it.
I guess anything I've ever played comes through somehow. The stuff we do mostly is like industrial, hardcore, hard-hitting, big sounds, stuff like that. Which I've never played in a band that sounded like that, but I've played in numerous rock bands that influenced that, I would say.
So what's up with this little Casio thing on the floor?
Oh, this guy? Yeah, this is kind of odd. It's a Casio, what is it, PT-80?
So this is the secret weapon. Come on.
Yeah, kind of. It's we're working on a quirky CD for like commercials, etc. And we had some good tunes and good melodies, and we decided to.
So you really are using it.
We're really using it. I bought it off of eBay for $15, and we did 3 tracks on it. It's great. It's it's like weird sounding. It doesn't sound good at all. It sounds shitty. I tried to find the shittiest one I could, and this was it. And yeah, it works.
So Native Instruments or somebody needs to model this and make the quirky plugin.
Don't give away my secrets here.
The quirky...
They should do a model of this. There is a few out there by some other vendors, but this is just really crappy.
And it's got a little RAM card in there around. What is it?
It's got a little RAM card
here.
Go.
Yeah.
Still works from 1981. Yeah, this would fit, these tracks could fit in like a quirky indie movie like Napoleon Dynamite type thing, or a little funny commercial. At least we hope it will, but that's the kind of vibe it gets.
Very cool. So, Mick, can you give us a little tour of your signal path and the audio? I see that you have some hardware synths that you start off with, and I assume then those go right into the recording of the Orion. Where does it go from there, and how do you incorporate like some of the hardware signal processing?
Well, the analog synths, when I run mono, I go into this A-Designs Ready with the way too bright blue light that you see here. I always go into this guy because it adds some grit to it. I mean, it's already analog, so it has the warmth, but this warms it up a little bit more and adds some grit. And then I go to, sometimes I hit a compressor. I mean, I don't have to, but if I want to mold the sound that way, I could hit any of the distressors here. And then after that, I go into the Orion. And I patch it in through this mess of cables right here.
And do you ever run any of your internal in-the-box synths out through hardware and come back in?
I do the Virus, which is a software synth, even though it has a hardware controller. But I will put it through some distressors and then through the patch bay into the Orion again.
And then we went over, I know, some of the path that you use after your summing as far as your mastering chain. For monitoring, I see you have a couple sets of speakers.
I have some, my main ones are the ATC 25s, which I love to death. They're just amazing, true sounding, nice bottom end, true mids, not too sibilant. They're amazing. I recently got some Quested here just for a second reference hooked up to a sub, which I kind of like having the second reference. You don't really need it with the ATCs because they're just amazing, but I still like having it. I also have a little crappy boombox down on the floor for a third reference, you know.
It's just hard to get anything done without the crappy boombox.
Exactly right, exactly.
Well, we really appreciate having you in the Antelope team of artists.
Yeah.
And thanks for taking some time out.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks, Mick.